Congratulations, fellow anoraks, on watching this series, because there have been over 160 airplanes in the James Bond movies, and we are now in the final stretch with the planes of the Daniel Craig Bond era.
Get to the chopper!
It's Craig's Choppers, today on PCZ TV.
PCZ TV.
Now, the biggest question I have, are there any new manufacturers in the Craig's movies that we haven't covered by now, between the Connery, the Moore, the Dalton, and the Brosnan Bond movies? Well, we're going to find out. And as you know, besides seeing what Eon Productions used in the movies, this video series is also a learning exercise about the aviation industry via James Bond. And as always, we'll spice it up with fun facts along the way. And stay tuned until the end for some bonus content. And the standard final note before we begin, as always, I will mispronounce every non-American word. Sorry. So let's get started with 2006's Casino Royale. Being that a key part of the film are the baddies trying to blow up an airplane, there are a lot of airplanes as movie extras. But we'll start with the MacGuffin of the movie. I'll just briefly touch on the Skyfleet S570. Fun fact, it's actually a 747 modified by both physical props and CGI. But really, the two key aeronautical vehicles we see in the movie are, first, the de Havilland Canada Twin Otter seaplane, which brings Bond to Nassau. Now, we've covered de Havilland before, so it's time to look at the Twin Otter, and one with floats.
With cheese, Mr. Squidward, with cheese.
The de Havilland Canada DHC-6 Twin Otter is a Canadian short takeoff and landing utility aircraft developed in the mid-60s. It was built from 65 to 88 and was so beloved that in 2006, Viking Air purchased the type certificate and restarted production. In fact, they then readopted the name de Havilland Canada. Over 900 of these aircraft have been built. And secondly, Bond flies in our old friend, the MD-600N helicopter, which we've spoken about before, so no need to belabor this one. But here's a fun fact. You will note that we see a lot of Virgin Airline planes on the tarmac, but I don't think we ever see Bond actually flying in one. I'm guessing that Virgin Airlines is just product placement, and see this video for my thoughts on product placement. Fun fact, one of the background actors in this movie is the Bell 206 Jet Ranger. This makes it the most commonly seen helicopter in all the Bond movies, appearing in at least 7 movies. Next up is 2008's Quantum of Solace. Again, we'll cover the key aircraft in the movie. The most important is, of course, the DC-3. Well, it's sort of ironic because it's a ye old DC-3 manufactured by Douglas Aircraft. It was featured in the movie, but frankly, it was the workhorse of World War II. Now, fun fact, one of the 2 DC-3 used in the film was actually built in 1943 and was used in D-Day and Operation Market Garden, making her a true veteran. Next up is a Canadair Challenger 604. This is our second Canadian product in as many movies. Anywho, this is a new plane for Bond. The Bombardier Challenger is a family of business jets that was initially developed by Canadair based on Bill Lear of Learjet fame and his concept. And when in 1986 Canadair, am I saying that right? Canadair was close to bankruptcy, it was bought by Bombardier, who ironically also bought Learjet. The Challenger was produced in 1986 and over 1,000 have been built. Next up, we have the SIAI Marchetti SF260TP. Wow, did I say that right? SIAI or Marchetti? I can't believe it. We have a new manufacturer this late in the game. Wow. So, SIAI or CI? Marchetti? Whatever. Began life in 1915 when Domenico Lorenzo Santoni and Luigi Cappe founded the company. In English, it's called the Seaplane Company of Upper Italy. I can't pronounce it in Italian. But as suggested by its name, the firm initially specialized in the manufacture of seaplanes. During 1943, the company was actually rebranded as SIAI Marchetti, with Marchetti being their chief designer. But post-World War II, times were tough in Italy, and in 1953, the company reemerged from bankruptcy and quickly began to focus on development efforts in the emerging market for helicopters. Largely as a result of this investment into helicopters, the helicopter arm of the firm was acquired by Augusta. We remember them, don't we? In 1983. Meanwhile, the fixed wing asset side of the company was absorbed into the aircraft manufacturing interest Ermacchi during 1997. Fun fact, Sia Marchetti may have had some unique flying boats, but it's probably best known is a tri-motor World War II bomber, the SM-79 Spaverio. I said that wrong. Okay, now to the plane in the movie. Sorry. The SF-260 is a light aircraft which is commonly marketed as a military trainer and light combat aircraft. It was designed by Italian aircraft designer Stelio Fratti. And seriously, can he look any more like a stereotypical Italian designer? Are these guys all cloned? Anyway, during the late 60s, the plane was marketed in the United States under the name Waco Meteor, and Army armed versions were sold as the SF-260 Warrior, which actually proved to be pretty popular with smaller air forces around the globe. Both piston and turboprop-powered models have been developed, and with production continuing until 2017 with a total of 976 aircraft built. And also in the movie, we have our old friend, the Bell 205. Ah, yes, the ubiquitous Huey. Now, fun fact, talking about background actors, perhaps as a nice homage to Goldfinger, we see a Piper PA-28 in this movie. Was that intentional? I would like to think so. The next movie is Skyfall in 2012. Great movie. And this really is a Craig Chopper movie, as the only flying machines we see are helicopters.
Get to the chopper!
And actually, they're both from Augusta Westland, who we have covered before. So, onto the first helicopter with the AW-159 Wildcat. The Wildcat, well, it's really just a second-generation Lynx military helicopter that evolved, but they gave it a new name and a new coat of paint. The UK ordered 34 Wildcats for the British Army and 28 for the Royal Navy. Now, fun fact, the first production Wildcat was received by the British military in 2012. So when Skyfall was being filmed, these things were the newest, shiniest toys in the British military arsenal. Next up is the Augusta Westland AW-101. It's a 3-engine medium-lift helicopter designed for both military and civil roles. First flying in 1987, it's still in production today with over 225 units made. Fun fact, the helicopter, which attacks Bond's home, was flown by Augusta Westland test pilots during the filming. And now we're up to 2015's Spectre. And our good friend, the Messerschmitt BO-105 helicopter is back. Bond subsequently throws the baddies out, and in a first for Bond, flies the helicopter himself. The man has skills. And now, unbelievable, but another new manufacturer is on the scene, Britten-Norman, with their BN2 Islander, piloted by Bond. Well, John Britton and Desmond Norman started developing crop spraying equipment in the middle of the 50s, but then quickly turned their hand to aircraft design. The company was located in Bembridge on the Isle of Wight, although airframes have been assembled under subcontracts in Romania for more than 50 years. Of course, typical, ownership of the company passed through a number of hands, with BN Group acquiring the assets of Britten-Norman in 2000. Now, fun fact, Britten-Norman is the sole independent commercial aircraft producer left in the United Kingdom. Fun fact 2, during the 1960s, Britten-Norman were involved in the development of hovercraft via their subsidiary, Cushioncraft. Their first craft, the CC-1, was the world's second hovercraft. And it'd be nice to think that Bondola, see what I did there? In Moonraker was made by Cushioncraft. Anyway, the Britten-Norman BN2 Islander is a light utility aircraft and regional airliner. It's still in production and is one of the best-selling commercial aircraft of its type still produced in Europe. There are over 750 in service around the world. Fun fact, after this movie, there were 8 fewer Islanders than before. Fun fact 2, this is the second aircraft that Bond rips the wing off. Of course, the first being Roger Moore's Bond in Live and Let Die. And oh look, now we find our friend the McDonnell Douglas MD-500 is back. We talked about that before, so we'll move on to the Airbus AS365 Dauphin. And we talked about that before too. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out my pronunciation nemesis, the AS355, the squirrel. Insert running gag here. No Time to Die, the latest and the worst Bond movie ever made. And we start off with our Skywagon A185 with floats, which makes another appearance. So we'll move on to the Augusta A109S Grand. Well, this is a new one. The Augusta Westland AW109S Grand is a lightweight twin-engine 8-seat multi-purpose helicopter. It's essentially really just a lengthened version of the AW109 with Grand tacked on. It originally entered service in 2005 and is still being produced today with around 150 units made to date. So we'll move on to the Boeing C-17A Globemaster III. Well, this is a new plane also. The McDonnell Douglas / Boeing C-17 Globemaster III is a large 4-engine military transport. It formally entered service in 1995, and about 280 were produced. Fun fact, it was manufactured for more than 2 decades in Long Beach, the final C-17 being completed in November of 2015. Fun fact 2, I was allowed to tour the Long Beach facility and watch the production. Pretty amazing. Next, we have a fictional glider submarine sort of Q thing. It was sort of inspired by the Shemp Hearth glider, at least for the V-shaped tail, I guess. I don't know. But now, time for an anorak rant.
I can feel your anger.
Another reason I despise this movie is that James Bond, our hero, who has shown repeatedly that he can fly an airplane or a helicopter or anything, is instead relegated to being a passenger while another 007 flies the glider. Really? That's not my Bond. Craig is also driven around on the back of a scooter by said 00.
Why?
Really? Oh, how I yearn for the good old days when our hero was in charge, with Bond on a bike with a smoking hot Bond girl in the back.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
And so the Craig era ends on a whimper. Nice suit.
But wait! There's more!
And now, as promised, bonus material. So we started with Casino Royale, and we will end on Casino Royale. Well, the 1967 version anyway. 2 planes are shown in the movie. One is the DC-3, and we just covered the DC-3, so let's chat about the second plane. It's a Pan Am DC-8. So the DC-8 and the Boeing 707 were the premier competitors of the early jet age, with over 1,000 707s and over 550 DC-8s delivered. The DC-8 was often preferred for its longer range and for the potential cabin stretch, particularly with the 60 series. And as we spoke about our old friend Pan Am before, we'll just end the Bond plane review, and guess what? We did it. More information than you ever wanted to know about planes, the manufacturers, and the airlines in the Bond movies. If you haven't seen my other Bond videos, feel free to peruse the list. If you've been watching this far, don't forget to like, comment, and, well, you know the drill. And now, most importantly, my disclaimers. Bye.